Hello, welcome to week 2. We will be covering chapter 2, Transportation, the Critical Link in the Economy. I hope that you are enjoying learning about transportation and its effect on our economy so far as we go deeper into this subject. As you recall back from chapter 1, we were looking at several factors that affected transportation. First of all, we looked at it as critical link in the supply chain. Now we're going to look at it as a critical link in the economy. Every week, every day, we are affected by transportation. We are seeing the big trucks that go down the interstate. We know that when we log online to Amazon.com and we're going to order a package, we imagine that it's going to be packed in the warehouse and sent through airmail at times so we can get it at a faster shipping time. When you think about cars or other materials and machines being shipped overseas through big maritime carriers, those are different things and different aspects of transportation that affect our everyday life. Let's just take a couple of seconds and look at the learning objectives for Chapter 2 and how this will affect your study. First of all, we want to understand the importance of transportation to the economic vitality of our countries and regions. Think about how it affects us just in the Hope and Texarkana regions or any other regions in Arkansas, Northeast Texas you may live in. Every day we're watching the supply chain go up and down the interstate. I always like to share this story with my classes. When I teach at Texarkana campus, one of my classrooms faced out to the interstate. And I walked over there and just looked out the window one day and I said, wow, to nobody in particular, that is a supply chain in action. Guess what couple of trucks I saw? I saw a Swift transportation truck and I saw FedEx. And I always try to see what types of trucks are going up and down the interstate and what are the most common carriers through that interstate 30. It's very interesting to watch because it's an everyday thing that you experience no matter what. Every time I order something, I think about how is it going to be shipped and transported to me. Very interesting concepts as well. Now, the next thing that I want us to be realizing with this chapter is we need to appreciate the role and the contributions of transportation systems to the economic development of the countries or regions, which I just mentioned a little bit in my personal examples. And then third, we want to understand how transportation affects the social and political dimensions of the economy or region. And we're going to appreciate the historical role of the transportation from the economic, social, and political perspective. Then we want to discuss the impact that improved transportation has upon land values. I want you all to pay careful attention to that particular objective because that is the subject of this week's discussion post. Okay? And then we're going to understand how transportation affects the price of goods and services. And we want to appreciate the function and scope of transportation in advanced and developed economies. The beginning introduction of the chapter has a couple of lines I'd like to just go ahead and read out to you guys because it sums up the essentials of this chapter and even this course. The case, it says transportation is a pervasive and vital function in all industrialized economies. Transportation systems provide the necessary critical links between producers and consumers, both domestically and globally. That speaks volumes, doesn't it, to you as you think about the impact. As you go through the chapter, I want you to pay attention to several different aspects of this transportation infrastructure. When we go and we look over, we start off at the very beginning of the historical significance. From the Erie Canal to now how transportation can play a role in national defense. Wow, things have really changed over the years. But I want y'all to think about this. Sometimes the historical significance gives you a glimpse into the future. Over on page 33, there's something interesting I want you to read at the very last paragraph. Transportation plays a major role in national defense, just like I mentioned, but this role has long been recognized by the governments. It talks about the Roman Empire, how it built this great system of roads, but it was only for military purposes at that time. We think about Winston Churchill, that he talked about transport was the underlying basis for all that could be accomplished for fighting a war. So we do see the military significance to supply chain, right? I believe we already have got that connection established very well. especially when the majority of supply chain management students and those who work in it are employed by the Department of Defense or any other kind of company that's contractors for the military. Now, as we look at that, we're also going to talk about the different significance that transportation has, the economic, as well as different types of political significance as well. So let's start at the economic. So when we think about that, we're going to visit the word called values, or the term values of goods. Sometimes the transportation systems is the major determinant of the basic economic value of products. And we think about how that can be factored out. Well, by place utility. So place utility or place value, it is sometimes the reduction of transportation costs between point A's and point B can sometimes give the commodity the place utility or place value. And sometimes if that system is very inefficient or less efficient, the goods that will have no value at B because they could not be sold at the market price. So the more efficient method of transportation that is used to create place utility, the goods can now be sold at point B for a more competitive price. So as we think about our basic principles of business, the competitive advantage. Let's look over on page 37 when it talks about a couple, or actually 36, it talks about the law of squares or Ladner's law. And sometimes this is a phenomenon that can be illustrated in charts and graphs. And there's a couple on page 36, figures 2.1 and 2.2, that shows the relevant areas of Ladner's laws and also the landed cost of old and new transport systems. Then we look at time utility as well as quantity utility. So the concept of time utility is also aligned right with place utility. And then the quantity, sometimes transportation can give goods the quantity utility through the assurance that, hey, the goods will arrive at your destination without damage at the right quantity at the right time. And that is what most companies, if not all, are trying to accomplish. But when you look at that, you also think about the utility of goods. We think about the geographic specialization of it, the large scale production. Increased competition and land values can be the subpoints. On page 38 at the bottom and at the top at 39, I invite you to read very thoroughly the impact of land values, because again, this is going to help you be able to prepare this week's discussion question. As we look at transportation patterns, as we go through the chapter, again, it is the flow of people in commerce, and it does reflect what the economic activity is going on and demand in that particular area. As we get into some economic practices, practicals, we look at gross domestic product, GDP. And again, transportation can play a very vital role in the overall economy of the U.S. And as we look at that, passenger transportation is very interesting, has some interesting trends to look at. It's growing in relation to GDP. And much of this increase can be due to the greater use of automobiles, people traveling in automobiles, as well as airplanes. We also think about the freight transportation and then also the modal split. And modal split is a term you need to pay attention to. It's a useful analytical tool for the study of transportation because it divides the total transportation market for passenger and freight movements according to its use or value. Very interesting to think about that concept. Now, as we go on from the economic significance, we look at the environmental significance. We think about the concept that's pretty new in supply chain, been around probably less than 5 years, is the green supply chain. And so it's our new vocabulary word. And transportation is an important part of all supply chains. And so it's going to get a lot of attention in environmental analysis. Think about this, acid rain, the ozone reduction, and how the emissions from those big trucks can affect our air quality significantly, as well as the motor cars. And then also think about this, the maritime and water quality. There's a lot of supply chain action that goes on on the waters overseas or in our own United States waterways. And so we got to think about the maritime and the water quality as well. Not only is it for those that work in those environments, but those people that live in those environments as well. And then we think about noise and safety. As you live in a bigger city, or if you live near a highway, you live near a railroad track, as I live actually near a railroad track, I frequently have a lot of noise that comes through my neighborhood because I am right near a railroad track. But again, I have an appreciation for it because, again, it's a supply chain in action. Have a very unique perspective, and at times that can raise a few eyebrows, but I understand the significance, and you as supply chain management professionals and students do as well. Now, when we talk about the social significance and political significance, we know that means government involvement. We also know that means a lot of critical and legislation can all kind of come in and bring out rules, policies, and procedures. But I want y'all to look at this. With the outgrowth of regulation is in the common carrier, it has the duty to render service without discrimination based upon set rates for specific commodities. The government's role as a regulator of transportation services may entail certain drawbacks for the public. The right of eminent domain may require individuals to move and sell their land, even though they might not wish to do so. Think back to the land values. And as we move towards the end of the chapter, it's going to talk more about the overviews of modern transportation, and even how that's going to affect the future. Transportation can interact with three groups of our society: our users, providers, and the government. But transportation decision makers are expected to consider all aspects of society in one form or the other when they're making their decisions. And as you get through the end of the chapter, there's going to be some overviews of some transportation trends, the market, the supply, the management, and the policies and regulations of the government. That's neatly lined out for you in Table 2-5 on page 49. So as we summarize the chapter, we realize there is a lot of stipulations on how transportation can act in the economic playing field of our country. Very interesting, and not just in our country, but also globally. Because again, any good introduction to business class will teach you all about the global economy and how it is very significant. And it's interwoven into the fabric of supply chain curriculum as well as our textbooks. So as you're going through on at the end of page 50, they summarize each point of the objectives that you all were needing to know to be able to help you read and study and apply what you learned this week. I hope you enjoyed this chapter as you read. I invite you to go into the Week 2 folder and watch all the supplemental videos. Go to supplychaindive.com and download some great transportation articles. There's a lot of different articles out there that will just lead to your knowledge. And again, I invite you to use those resources to help you, especially in your discussion post. Again, I hope you enjoyed this week. Lesson. If you have any questions, you will contact me. Have a great week.